Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Unravel Your Mind. We're here to help transform relationships to love and life. So, as always, I answer questions that get submitted, pre-submitted, but you can also submit them here in the comments section. So, please, if you have a question and you're on with me live, don't hesitate to write while we're in process. And if something comes up about a question that I'm answering and you want a little bit more, feel free to add something there too. And if you're watching on replay, no worries. I'll check for next week and bring any of your questions into the next week's show if I don't get them this week. So thank you so much for joining. I can't wait. We've got a whole lineup of really great stuff. It's a beautiful day in Southern California, and the sun is out and shining, so a lot to be grateful for. And let's jump right in and get to question number 1. I desire close connection, but don't want to be dependent and fear attachment, and not isolate myself. Independence, interdependence, and dependency, 3 really important concepts, right? That I think most of us know, and where sometimes that comes in is implementing them in our relationships, right? Like, what does it actually mean to be independent? It means that you don't have to have the other person in your life, but that you are doing your own things. You know who you are. You've got your own things going on. That's being independent. Dependent is when you need that person to do something for you, to fill a void for you. And dependency often comes when we share a wound with someone. That's also where the chemistry can come in too. So it's important that when you start to feel that you might be more dependent on someone, that you dig a little bit deeper into, what is that wound that I'm actually trying to bubble up when why I've attracted this person to even be in this relationship, right? And then the interdependent part is where you're both doing your own independent things, but that you do have a sense of reliability on one another, right? Where you're able to come back and know that there's a foundation of support for each other, but that you don't have to have that person there. It's nice to have that person there, and that person's going to be there for you as best they can, whenever they can, but there's times where they're not going to be able to be there for you. So that's where that interdependent part really comes in, when you can still show up for each other, but not demand something, expect something. That's where it gets a little bit tricky, and that's where the dependency comes in. So just feel a little bit more into exactly what the connection is with this person and why you're feeling so dependent, because it's something within you that's being called up for resolution. So it's great that you're asking this question, because it means that you are actually really trying to get in there and figure out what is that hook of dependency that we don't want. Okay. And again, the sunlight just wants to come in and shine down on me. I even moved my whole studio here to try to avoid it, but let's just take it as it is. The sun is a beautiful thing. Let's see if I can get it a little bit more off my face. I thought I had a solution, but it's not quite there. Okay. Question number 2. What do you do when I want something like a romantic partner and I feel like I've done the work and explored limiting beliefs and post hurts that are stopping it from coming, and heart-opening meditations? Okay, so this person's done heart-opening meditations. They've tried to figure out past hurts. They've done meditations to try to open their mind about this, and it sounds like it's still not coming. And everything else I can possibly think of, but it's still not coming. So oftentimes that's resistance. And I know I sometimes despise that word just as much as everybody else, right? It's like, if I knew what I was resistant to, I would get rid of it. But there's something deep within you, and 2 things that come to mind that perhaps will resonate with this person that's asked this question, but in general, I think they're very relevant for a lot of us. And I'm going to say it a little bit more from a woman's perspective in this next phrase, but it's about our masculine, feminine energy and that balance. We talk about that a lot. There may be an imbalance within you, a sense of, actually hooks into the previous question, a sense of too much independence that may be warding off the male masculine energy because they don't see where they fit. there's a nice balance and a nice dance and a nice swirl that can happen with masculine and feminine energy in relationships. And so that's the first thing that's coming to mind is, are you in balance with that? Are you in balance with receiving and allowing and showing up less independent? Doesn't mean you have to be dependent, doesn't mean you have to be damsel in distress, but are you showing up in a way that's soft and inviting, and in a way that the man can explore and get to know who you are? Because they still like the chase, and it doesn't have to be perceived as bad. They still want to know that they're actually, attracting their woman and getting their woman. So those aren't probably the right words, but you know what I'm saying. That there's just something about the masculine and the chase and the conquering, and it doesn't have to be, again, in a controlling way or in a bad way, but in a way like, okay, I've really earned this relationship in my life. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. The second thing that comes to mind is, and this one always bugs me too when people tell me this, but it's so true, is it could just be timing. It could be that you're not ready for someone to come into your life, even though you think that you are, because they may cramp your style. What I mean by that is, maybe they're going to have different interests than you, and maybe you're not ready to give up a certain aspect or section of your life for those interests, right? So your soulmate or divine complement could be sitting right around the corner, but if you're not ready to give something up that the universe knows, your higher self knows, will make that connection to that interdependency, that could also be holding you back from meeting someone. So sometimes it is about timing. And I do believe that we can bring that timing forward. But I don't think that we have to focus on that, or that we need to make that necessary, because it's less about time and more about your centeredness and your groundedness in who you are. So hopefully that's helpful. And if not, I'm always open to hearing more in the questions and comments. So please write me. Okay, question number 3. How much do you think global issues like the war and other international issues impacts the psyche of people in the United States? What can we do from here? Another really great question. Before I answer that, let me see if I can move just a little bit more again and see if I can. The sun is so beautiful and so bright. There we go. I think that's gonna help. That's gonna put us in a good spot here. Okay, so the question again is, how much do you think global issues like the war and other international issues impacts the psyche of people in the United States? What can we do from here? I get the question because I think a lot of times we feel like we're disconnected because we're so far away geographically, but energetically, we're absolutely being impacted by these energies. I don't know the person that asked the question, but I know that probably where they're coming from is feeling some of the effects of this. I'm a big believer in really monitoring your mind. And in order to monitor your mind, it also takes monitoring what you allow to come into your mind. So what I mean by that is, you may want to consider turning the TV off. You may want to consider not watching all of the videos. It doesn't mean that you're not connected, and it doesn't mean that you don't care. It means that you're using a little bit more discernment around how much you're going to allow that narrative to be in your mind. And when you do get exposed to those things, that you spend more time visualizing what it would be like to actually have resolution and feel into that resolution emotion. And that will help the war. That will help the people there. That will help the people here. So important that we stay in this place of peace. And I think the other thing that comes forward to share about this is, anytime we're in war or a disagreement or an argument, it's always a calling for us to respect people for exactly where they are and who they are. I know that sounds like way simplistic for the complexity of what's happening with the war. And I know that there's a lot of details and a lot of history and a lot of that contributes to this. So I'm not discounting that, but I am saying that it originated with someone, a group of people, not wanting to honor another group of people, not wanting to allow someone else to be who they are, right? We want to project this lens that we have of our own, and make it someone else's. Well, they should look like this. They should do that. They should believe this. I mean, which is also so ironic that a lot of these wars are based in religion, right? And that's a belief system. So when we go back to, our North Star and being connected to source intelligence, the intelligence that runs this planet, that helps our heartbeat, helps us breathe. All of that makes the ocean swell, right? That source intelligence is what we always want to go back to and line up with. So yes, I do think it's impacting us. And I think the best way we can give love back is to not necessarily ignore it, but to project what it would look like if resolution had come to pass. And on a smaller scale in our own life and our own relationships, then instead of being at war and disagreement, do your best to see, how can I see what that person's perspective is? Where are they coming from? And really sit in that and just allow them to be where they are. And sometimes that's not where we want them to be, and that's hard. I have that situation myself sometimes, and I want to, nudge people. I want to push people. I want to, pull people. I want to help people. And a lot of times we just have to let them be exactly where they are, because they're doing their process in their way. And so that is really the key takeaway here. All right, let's go to the next question. I feel my partner disconnect from me, and yet he acts like there's nothing wrong, like he wants to ignore whatever the issue is. What should I do? Well, I think this is really common. I don't know if this is the case with this particular individual, but it's really common that the avoider type personalities, that they actually don't know how to bring forward their thoughts, and so they avoid. And a lot of times it can be perceived as not caring, and that makes it a little bit difficult, because they may care a lot. It's just that they're caring so much that they want to avoid the situation because they don't know how to articulate their emotion. So that's a really important thing. Allow them to disconnect, but also communicate with them. Communicate with them and say, hey, I feel that you're somewhat distant from me, or you're disconnected from me. What's going on for you? And see if they're willing to share and to talk about it. And if they're not, still offer your feelings and how you're feeling about it. Like, hey, it really hurts me when you're not able to share with me something that I know is really on your mind, or really, really upsetting you. So you still have to share your feelings. Otherwise, you're just going to hold resentment. And you're going to build stories that potentially aren't true about what that person is experiencing, thinking. And so it's really important to just have that clear communication. And again, understand that sometimes others just are avoiders. It's not that we need to always give them, the spiritual pass, but we do need to communicate and say, hey, I see that you're avoiding this. I see that you're trying to run around this. And I really need to get into this with you. And see where that gets you, but also try to come from a place of understanding of where they are. I think that'll be really helpful for you. All right, let's go on to the next question. I don't work anymore. My children are in college, and I'm not wanting to build a career of any kind, but I feel like I should be doing something more. Sorry, I don't have my glasses on and I can't see very well. So I don't work anymore. My children are in college, and I'm not wanting to build a career of any kind, but I feel like I should be doing something more. How do I figure out what that is? Well, a really simple technique comes to mind, and it might sound kind of silly, but I think that there's a lot to this. Think about when you were a kid. Think about when you were a little girl. I don't know what age, maybe 5, 6, 7, maybe a teenager. What was something that you did then that you knew brought you a lot of joy? Maybe it was coloring. Maybe it was playing a particular game. Maybe it was dressing up. Maybe it was going to a park. Whatever it was when you were younger, what were some of the things that you can remember that you just went, oh, that was so much fun? What comes to mind for me is I remember every single day in summer vacation, I would go to the swimming pool. And that was like my thing every day. And I'd have friends that were there, and we'd all hang out, and then we'd come back home, and we'd have our afternoon and our dinner with family and all of that. So I don't think at my age and my situation, of course I can find a swimming pool, but I don't think that that's probably what's going to work for me. because it's going to be a different level of community that I would find at a swimming pool, in the middle of the afternoon here. And so I think what the point is it's community, right? So finding a community that also enjoys doing some of the same things that you like to do. So if it's knitting, or if it's, racquetball, or pickleball is so popular now, right? Just feel into what is an activity. And the thing I always love about doing activity, like I go to a spin class, and the spin class is wonderful because most of the instructors are very much about building community. So when you go, you feel like, I know this person, and having conversation. It doesn't have to be long conversation, but it's community, and it's doing an activity. And in that case, it's an activity that actually is a 2-for-1, right? Because you get to do a workout, and you get to feel like you're contributing in some way to your own personal health or to community. So that might be a spot. Now, if you want something that's more adult and less fun, and you're like, but no, I want to still do something that, potentially has some monetization. Again, I would go back to, what is it that you really liked? Did you like to be in the garden? Did you like to be in the yard? Maybe there's, a position at a botanical garden. Maybe there's a position, just being in the public, that you would like to do, right? And I think if this individual is a more mature individual, not meaning old, but just meaning like you're not 20, you want something that's fun to do. Also, don't be afraid to do something that you feel is sort of like beneath you, if it resonates, right? So if you go into your favorite coffee shop, and I don't necessarily mean Starbucks, but it could be, maybe there's a local mom and pop coffee shop, and you really enjoy your time there. Maybe you want to do something there. Maybe you want to actually, offer to work there because you enjoy the energy of the place, right? So if money's an issue, then of course you'd have to take this in a totally different route. If you really want to make significant money, and you need to actually have an income, then the route would be slightly different. But I would still say find what you love to do. If it's working with people, there's lots of different positions that you can work with people. If it's not working with people, then consider what is it that makes you glow, and then start filling in the blanks as to what some possible positions could be. And I think you'll find that really helpful. And I think it's also, if your children are gone, you're into a totally different life stage. And that just means that lots of things are probably changing for you. So feel into what your new life looks like and be excited about it, right? It's new. And sometimes as we age, we don't really like the newness of things. We like the more I know what I'm doing kind of stuff. At least that's the way it is for me sometimes. And then once I actually jump into something that is new or is a different experience, I go, I wish I would have done that sooner, right? I wish I would have participated or checked out that yoga studio or that meditation earlier. I just didn't, because it just wasn't familiar and I hadn't been there before. So step out a little bit, branch out a little bit, and find something that makes your heart sing. Maybe it's singing, right? We don't know. Maybe it's voice lessons. Okay, let's go on to the next question. What are your thoughts on the political situation in the United States? Do you think we'll have some kind of civil war or drama with the upcoming election? Usually, I really don't like to answer political questions. I think I've said that before on the show. I guess for a couple of reasons. And if I haven't explained it before, I'll explain it again. And maybe this is an important thing to actually be bringing up. We are so divided in the United States. We have two political parties, and those two political parties are a way that people are feeling in some type of community. But this is not the type of community that we really want to have. I would encourage everyone to step away from this hard-nosed idea about Republicans and Democrats, and this is what we stand for, because it hasn't been serving us. It served us for a while, but I think we've seen over the last several years that Republican, Democrat, being in these hard places is just like being in, okay, it's not, but just I want to use the analogy of being, Palestinian and Israeli. Of course, it's a very different level of intensity, but it is, again, back to what we talked about earlier on the show, that it's finding the differences between each other, as opposed to the unity, like what do we agree on? And if it were up to me, my idea is that we don't actually get to vote for a candidate, that we actually go in, assuming that this could be done in a very non-biased way, but we know that any program in the computer that's programmed can be biased, right? Based on the person's belief system. So let's just pretend for a moment that it wasn't and that it was absolutely fair, the input. It'd be wonderful if we had to vote on our values, our morals, our ethics, how we feel about things, what we really want, and then let the algorithm connect us to candidates that have demonstrable examples of how they've voted in the past or what they've done for community service, right? So this is my big idea. If there's anybody out there that wants to implement it, I'll certainly have a much longer conversation about it, because I think that it's so important that we find what's really important to us on many levels, not just pick like abortion or gun control or some issue that we think is like who we are. Don't vote on an issue. Don't vote on a candidate. Don't vote because you just want to vote for a particular platform. Vote because you've educated yourself and that you really understand a lot of what people stand for. Now, with that said, I've spent hours, which normally in a political cycle, I would not spend a lot of time looking at candidates, because a lot of them just vibration, I can feel into it, and they're just really, really very political. And for me, that does not resonate. However, there's one candidate this time around that has really grabbed my attention, and it's RFK, Robert Kennedy. And the reason why is because he has so much historical knowledge. He's very honest. He's very upfront. Yes, we have to see how that plays out when he's in office. I truly believe that running independent, that he will have the presidential office in the next election. Because if we're still moving forward with the individuals that we have, we're in this old model. We're in this old system. And I just would encourage people to just consider like the deeper whys behind your belief system and what it is that you really want and what are you unified on with friends and family. Otherwise, I guess, the question is, are we going to have a civil war? I think we could have a lot of drama taking place, and it's completely unavoidable. Again, it goes back to really taking into consideration someone else's feelings, someone else's lens, where someone else is coming from, and taking some of the emotion out of it and letting people express themselves so that we can have more conscious conversations and more valid conversations, meaning that people feel validated. Doesn't mean that you agree, but it means that you help them feel seen, right? People need to be seen and heard. It doesn't mean we always need to agree, but I think we can find more points of agreement than disagreement. And so that would be my challenge to everyone, is to not get so caught up in this political landscape, this party platform concept, because we are moving into a whole new idea about how we are going to navigate on planet Earth. So hopefully that's helpful. I'm very open to hearing anyone else's comments in the chat. If you have a disagreement or you agree or you have another question on that, I'm happy to talk about it now or next week. All right, the next question. I've been married a long time. I love my husband, but something is missing. I'm not sure how to get the fire back. Do I need to? Is it a bad thing if we don't have a hot romance all the time? Well, I think you bring up some good points. I don't think that you have to have a hot romance all the time in marriage and long-term relationships, but I think what you do want is to have a really strong emotional bond. And to have that bond means that both parties need to communicate. And there is a sensual aspect that can really help facilitate that. The more we touch each other, the more our oxytocin levels raise. We know this from when a baby's born and the mother breastfeeds. The oxytocin hormone bonds the baby and the mother together. And so when even simple things like making eye contact, but touching and embracing and hugging, non-sexual things, but very sensual things, can really help us stay connected, especially when we're in a point of perhaps disagreement, or we're like, we're feeling the tension between each other. Touching each other and just really being present for each other can help shift that. So I don't think it has to be hot, steamy romance, but I think that it can be. I think that if you both put a little bit more effort back into energy between the two of you, which I know that sometimes the chemistry kind of fades over time and life comes in, but there's lots of tantric things that you could do. I say things because I'm like off the top of my head. I'm sure there's YouTube videos. I'm sure there's books. There's lots of tantric practices that can help you really get into energetic sync with your spouse. So I would highly recommend that you look at some of this tantric activity and that you leverage the bond that I think that you're communicating that you have, to grow it into something more, and so that you can blossom it in a whole new way, right? And maybe it's like just going back to, let's go on a date, right? Let's just go do a fun date. Let's go somewhere we don't normally go. Let's do something we don't normally do. And because you have that long-term partner, you have something that a lot of people desire, which is familiarity and trust and all of that that's built in because you know each other so well. And so leverage that, leverage how much you love each other, leverage how well you know each other, and then do something totally different and experience something totally new. And maybe you even consider just taking a honeymoon, right? Like you say, let's just go somewhere. Maybe it's a trip to Mexico. Maybe that's less expensive if if finances. I wouldn't say like, well, I mean, look, it's up to you, but I wouldn't say like Vegas. I would say do something that creates a level of sensuality. I think a place like Vegas is just like extra stimulating in the external world, and it's not what would facilitate more of a sensual honeymoon kind of thing, right? So think honeymoon. Where would I go for my honeymoon? And even if it's just going to someone's house that they have a second home, and you want to just go and spend a long weekend there, just the two of you, and without any drama of anyone else, right? And just turn off your phones and say, we're not going to watch I don't know if you can do this. I think this would be fabulous, but turn off your phones. Don't watch TV. Go out into nature. Have sex. Spend time together, right? Do the things that you would do if you were newlyweds, right? If you were newlyweds, I don't think you'd turn on Netflix and binge watch a whole weekend of a new series, right? So you have to get into that different mindset. What would you do if you're going on honeymoon? What would be the fun things that you would be dreaming up, and serving each other, right? Serving each other and taking care of each other, whether it's just making coffee or whatever it is that your beloved loves to have, and taking care of each other in that way. All right. I think, is there any questions on the live? I think we're down to the end here of my list. Yes, let me just double check over here. If there's anything else, anyone that's on the show live or on replay, please write the questions in below, and I'm happy to answer them now or next week. So I so appreciate every week all the questions that come in. They're always so fabulous, and always great themes that come through. So I appreciate everyone submitting questions. Please do for next week, and I look forward to seeing you next week on Sunday at 11:11 Pacific time. Until then, wishing you much bliss and love.